A pregnant woman who had just been struck by lightning was brought to a local hospital. Unfortunately, doctors managed to save only the baby, but it was born albino. The father asked to see the baby, which had already been placed in an incubator. The brainwave meter shows too much activity. Suddenly, the father says, "That's not my son," and cries. As time passed, the strange child was raised by his grandparents, but they passed away one day. We learn that the albino was kept in the basement by his relatives. Sheriff Barnum brought in Jesse's child psychologist. The man says the neighbors say the kid's mentally retarded and kind of a freak. Maybe the old folks kept him hidden for a reason. The sheriff and the psychologist went down to the basement and saw a guy sitting in the dark. He said in a calm voice that his name was Powder. Soon the guy showed up from the shadows and his name was actually Jeremy. The sheriff was shocked to see such an unusual person. Jeremy says that he can be outside only when the sun is not very high, because he has a painful sensitivity to light, and there are times when dark glasses do not help the guy. Powder never went to school, although he loves to read. The boy has a phenomenal memory. Pudra asked Jesse to name any page in the book, and he told from memory exactly what was written there. The guy knows by heart all the books that are in his considerable library. Powder, wearing dark glasses and an old grandfather's suit, left the basement. As the boy passed near the police cars, a siren suddenly went off. Only now the sheriff noticed that the roof of the house was studded with lightning rods, and the deputy also told him that the dead grandfather's body was saturated with electricity, as if he had been defibrillated. Jesse takes Powder to the small town of Vinton. The lady works in a boarding school for boys, and is going to leave the boy here. The unusual young man immediately attracted the attention of the boys playing soccer. Jessie tells her colleague that Jeremy behaves like an unintelligent child who knows absolutely nothing about the world. In the canteen, Jeremy eats separately from the others. But of course he couldn't be ignored by the local bullies. They approached him and asked him why he looked like a vampire. Jeremy tried to ignore their leader, John. But the bully took his food and said that all newcomers were subject to a test, that they had to keep the spoon on the tip of their nose like Mitch or up their ass. Powder took the spoon, then rubbed it, and left it standing on the table. Suddenly all the cutlery was magnetized to the spoon. Everyone in the dining room froze in place. Then another spoon showed up and danced and jumped to the others, destroying the whole structure. Powder smiled, but John gave him an unkind look. We learn that the sheriff has a complicated relationship with his son, and his wife, Emma, is terminally ill and suffering from severe pain. The whole town is already gossiping about the unusual guy, and the caregiver also shared her opinion and began to insult the guy, but the sheriff stood up for him. The local doctor examined Jeremy and stated that the boy is perfectly healthy. Soon Jeremy should get special lenses to protect his eyes from bright lights. Jesse suggested that the boy go to the local school, and Jeremy agreed. By the first day of school, Jeremy had received his lenses. Getting off the bus, the boy immediately gathered the gazes of all the students who were in the schoolyard. Physics in this school is taught by an eccentric teacher, Donald. The man rolled out a device called Jacob's ladder, which was invented to demonstrate electric current. Electric arcs arising one after another gives Jeremy discomfort. The guy is shaking, and metal objects around him jump and deform. Suddenly, electricity began to pass through Jeremy, and back out again. Powder was lifted into the air, and he levitated until Donald shattered the device. The teacher touched the boy and an electric current ran through his body. Reporters have gathered outside the hospital where Jeremy was admitted, but the sheriff won't let them in. Donald tries to get into the boy's room. The doctor reports that Jeremy shows no signs of electrocution and is feeling fine, although there is a big hole burned in his sweater. The teacher concludes that Jeremy is an electrical conductor, which is why his hair isn't growing. Meanwhile, Powder escaped from the hospital unnoticed. Our hero was wandering down the street until the dog of his classmate, Lindsay, started barking at him. The girl is surprised that the guy came to his senses so quickly. Lindsay noticed that Jeremy has a beautiful eye color, but the guy immediately took off his lens, which embarrassed the girl a little. Powder is watched by all the neighbors, and the guy admits that he can listen to people from the inside, hear all their thoughts and memories. But the girl did not take his words seriously. Jeremy walked back to his old house, but the sheriff blocked his way. The boy feels that the assistant sheriff is afraid of him. Jeremy says he doesn't want to go back to boarding school. And Jeremy can't be in the hospital anymore, because his worst memory is connected to that place. His birth. A professor came to the boarding school from the Ministry of Education. The thing is that Jeremy took an IQ test and got a phenomenal result. The professor is interested because the guy got all his knowledge from books. And also the guy cannot watch TV because all the equipment near him goes crazy and he himself becomes bad. Tests showed that Jeremy has the highest level of development in the history of mankind, but the guy doesn't care. The only thing he wants to do is go back to the farm. And he also knows that the professor actually thinks he's a fraud and moved here just to prove it. Jeremy's pissed off and all the machinery around him is out of order. The boys from the boarding school went on a camping trip under the supervision of the sheriff and his deputy. Jeremy didn't want to go, because a storm was coming and he could feel it with all his body. And the lightning has deprived him of his mother, and he remembers very well how it happened. In the forest, all the lizards came running to Jeremy. Suddenly he felt Mitch and John coming up behind him. The guy had a rifle in his hands and was pointing it at Jeremy. Suddenly a gunshot is heard. It's the assistant sheriff who shot the deer and is very happy about it. The animal dies in agony. Jeremy touched the deer and grabbed the hunter's arm. The boy made the killer feel what his victim was feeling now. The man fell to the ground and screamed in pain. Jeremy only let the man go when John almost shot him. This pain and anguish was something Jeremy himself let himself go through. To the sheriff and the psychologist, Jeremy tells him that he didn't attack the hunter. The guy just helped him see and realize what he was doing. Jeremy doesn't want to see anyone else, not even Jesse, because they only pretend to be his friends. The guy trashed the whole office with his mind. All he wants to do is go home. The doctor suggests that the sheriff put his wife back in the hospital, for she is torturing herself and him, but while Emma could talk, she asked to stay home. She's hopeless, but Barnum can't let her go. Jeremy was sitting alone in the cafeteria in the evening when his physics teacher approached him. Donald is fascinated by the unusual student, and apparently the guy is almost entirely made of energy. It seems a little more and he just won't need his body, and his mind is at a level of development from which people are separated by millennia. It's like he's a messenger from the future. Donald offered to be his friend and extended his hand to Jeremy. At the same time, the boy decided to show his teacher a trick and electrified him. The kid says his grandparents were always afraid to touch him. The assistant sheriff had changed a lot. The man removed all the guns from the house, and even refused to participate in the shooting competition, and also stopped carrying a gun at work. He admits that when Jeremy touched his hand, he felt wild fear and pain. It was as if he was dying along with the deer. Since then, he has been unable to hunt anymore. The sheriff came to Jeremy at night and asked him to go to his house. The man wanted to know what his wife Emma was thinking and feeling. Jeremy relays her thoughts. The woman can't die peacefully until she knows that her husband and son have reconciled. Emma believes Jeremy is an angel who has crossed over to take her away. The woman asked to have her old ring put on her finger. For a while, she even came to her senses. Meanwhile, the anxious nurse called the sheriff's son to come to his mother's house as soon as possible. His father came out to him and hugged his son tightly. At last Emma was able to go to heaven in peace. The next day Jeremy showed up at the town fair, and as usual everyone was looking at him. The guy read the townspeople's minds and they all think he just killed Emma. Powder tells Lindsay that all people think they live separate from everything, but everyone is a part of this world and everything is connected. Jeremy touched Lindsay and let her feel his heartbeat, read his thoughts, and dive into his memories. His father thought Jeremy was ugly and had always denied that he was his son. But Lindsay thought he had the most beautiful face in the world, and the girl kissed Jeremy. But they were interrupted by her father, who lunged at the boy. Jesse managed to intervene before the man raised his hand at the boy. Powder felt like the loneliest man in the world again. He wasn't going to stay at boarding school any longer, so he packed his things and was about to go to the farm, but he decided to stop by the gym and watch the most ordinary guys one more time. There, Jeremy got a glimpse of Sky in the shower room, his main. For this, John began to mock the young man and took his hat. That's when Jeremy said the words his drunken stepfather used to say to John. His stepfather had beaten John all his childhood, which is why he grew up so embittered. The jock got angry and pinned Powder against the wall. Suddenly there were rumbles of thunder, and the bully saw that Jeremy was scared. He and his buddies dragged the guy outside, and only Mitch tried to stand up for Powder, but John isn't going to stop. After stripping the poor guy naked, he began to mock his absolute whiteness of body. He kicked Jeremy into a mud puddle, and then the two goons picked him up and brought him back to John. Lightning flashed right above them, and Powder began to attract all the metal objects the bullies were wearing. Suddenly it was like Jeremy exploded with energy and scattered everyone around. The guys scrambled to their feet and John's heart stopped. Powder went over to him and started hitting him in the chest with electrical charges to restart his heart, and Jeremy managed to do it. Mitch promised to help him escape from boarding school. Jeremy hid in a car with haystacks and drove it to the farm. The guy finally got home and went down to his basement. Soon Jesse arrived here and found the guy in a completely empty room. Everything the young man once had has been taken from here. The lady promises Jeremy that if he goes with her, they will surely work something out. Donald volunteered to help them, but they didn't get away in time as the police arrived at the farm. Jesse asks the sheriff to just turn away and let them escape. The thunder rumbled again. The sheriff takes his partner aside and orders him to get out of here. For some reason, Jeremy didn't get in the car with Jesse. He told the sheriff that his wife hadn't gone anywhere, because she was everywhere. Powder ran into the field spreading his arms and the lightning struck right at him. Jeremy ran and filled with energy until he dissolved in a bright flash of light. The powerful pulse traveled through people. Powder became part of everything, he became pure energy that no longer needed a human shell. This is the end of the movie. Thank you all for watching this video to the end. Give this video a like. Write in the comments what you think about this movie, and see you in new videos.